As every year, a few days ago, the mod for the new Formula 1 season was released, and you can find it in Overtake GG. Modders always put in their utmost care and really do the best they can with what they have. Because in the end, limitations exist, and actually what you're seeing on screen right now are deliveries, because I also want you to see in this video how is this mod. I have to say this is not the only one mod, I mean there are more mods and you can find them in Overtake GG. You can see that most of the cars are quite well represented. In the mod itself, it mentions that there are details, some cars that aren't true to reality, and I understand that it's literally because they couldn't. Because honestly, if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that modders always do their best with what they can. When something's missing, it's because there's some issue, and obviously they haven't been able to it. But I have to say that most of the cars are really well done, and it's truly a mod that's very enjoyable. However, and here's where the topic of the video comes in, this year we've encountered the inability to change something important, which is the names of the drivers. And it's not just the names of the drivers, it also seems that the modders haven't been able to access that change of faces, which is something that, for example, if we go back, what you are seeing is F1 22 with modifications for the 2023 season. And here you can see that Fernando Alonso appears in Aston Martin, wearing the Aston Martin suit, and also has his helmet. But hey, don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not the mod's fault. I don't mean to say that since 2022 the modders have become lazy, because obviously that's not the case. Believe me, if it were possible they would have done. But the reality is very different, because it seems that the game each passing year presents more difficulties for modification, and in some way it's harming the gaming experience. I don't mean to say that people won't play with these mods. I think they will. They will play with them because, as I said, they're enjoyable, and in the end, it's a breath of fresh air. It gives you the feeling of playing with cars from the 2025 season, but you can't deny that starting a career mode or doing a quick race or whatever with Hamilton, in quotes, having the name and face of Carlos Sainz, well, it doesn't seem like the most appealing thing in the world. And of course, the same thing happens with Antonelli, for example, right? I mean, I want to do a race with Antonelli's Mercedes, and suddenly I find Hamilton's face and Hamilton's helmet. Well, it takes you out of the experience. And this happens with all the drivers. Because this year, there are a lot of driver changes this year. And this is something very noticeable. And this is where we reach a turning point and one of the key points of this video. But first, if you're enjoying the video, if you're liking the content, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any Formula 1 content. And now, let's see. Electronic Arts and Codemasters. You are bothering us to release a good game, but you also don't let modders fix your disaster. I mean, the modders can't work miracles, that's for sure. If the game is poorly made, it's clear that no modder is going to be able to fix it. I think everyone understands that, but what can be done is, to a certain extent, to dress it up and extend the life of this game as much as possible. Precisely, with mods. But if you keep limiting everything this way like you are doing this, I think this is going to hell. Even more so, when we have the very recent example of F1 Manager 24. And yes, comparisons are unpleasant, but this is the reality. Frontier just released an update where you can practically customize everything. Drivers, teams, and the calendar. And I'm going to say one thing. I don't think Electronic Arts and Codemasters have any excuse. Frontier has shown that nothing prevents having a customizable calendar in a licensed Formula 1 game and in a legal way. I mean, without having to resort to external applications or mods or things like that. In fact, in case you haven't noticed, what you're seeing on screen right now is F1 24. And this is a championship in the Grand Prix mode. Customizable, you can customize the calendar. And the question is, why can I do this in the normal Grand Prix mode but I can't do it in career mode? Which is where it makes the most sense to do it. I go further, you let me do this in Grand Prix mode, but the problem is that if I do this in Grand Prix mode, I can't do any quick races whenever I want with whatever car I want, on whatever track I want. Because the moment you start a custom championship in Grand Prix mode, you can't play another race, you have to delete that save, which is something I just can't understand. I mean, what's the point here? What difference does it make to have 3 slots for 3 quick races and be able to save a championship? It's just something I've never understood either. For me, it should definitely be a must for the next game, because it's true that when it comes to grid customization, I'm going to try to be completely realistic. And what do I mean by this? I can understand certain conflicts with the fact that you can customize a grid to your liking to start a career mode. Something like, I'm going to put Hamilton here, I'm going to put Verstappen in there. I understand that Frontier did this, probably knowing that there wouldn't be any more games. It was a way to create a timeless game within the limitations, but then who's going to buy the next one? Okay, I get that. Asking for this in the Codemasters game, I know it's not very realistic. The thing here is, if you're not going to put it officially, legally in your game, just leave the door open at least. And obviously, I'm talking about the modding. I mean, for most of the game's life, no one is going to resort to name changes or face changes really, if during the regular Formula 1 season people are going to play with the current teams and drivers. The thing is, when the new season starts, if you have that little door open to modding, I'm not saying you should allow the game to be 100% modifiable at all levels, but allowing certain things at least so that people can extend the game's lifespan is really going to keep more players active, and that's good for you. As I said, you can find a balance. There's a middle ground between creating a motorsport manager that is modifiable to infinity, for example, and a game like F1 2014. There's a middle point between that and what we have today, which is an extremely exaggerated limitation for modding, because obviously what it says on the modding website is that they haven't been able to do the face and name changes because the game doesn't allow it. They clarify this obviously so that everyone is aware of it. I think modding, although it's true that it can only save PC players, and it really makes me sad for console players, because I know there are a lot of people who play on consoles and I feel for them because they have no salvation in this regard. But well, let's try to save those we can. And the thing is, you can extend the life of this game if you allow modding to a certain extent and let people create mods with some freedom. You'll have more active players. The reality is that this game is dead, and maybe you can say, well, that's because of the license. But I have to say, I don't think so. Frontier has just shown that even resorting to mods officially in the game by the developer wouldn't be possible. I mean, they've just shown that you can change a damn customizable calendar. I mean, it can be changed, no problem. And they've also just shown you that legally, name changes for drivers can be allowed. I insist that I can understand that asking for the second thing isn't realistic from a company that's going to make a game next year. Sure, I get that. But the calendar issue is unacceptable. And modding has nothing to do with it. Modding is allowing people a little window to sneak in. You're not the one who's not Codemasters changing Hamilton's theme or whoever's theme. That's something completely different. I think when it comes to licenses, there wouldn't be any issue with having some freedom with modding. There are other people who say it's because of the anti-cheat system now, and that complicates name changes. I'm not saying this for any particular reason, but I don't think the cheat engine was used to change names in Formula 1 2014. I recently made a video on the channel talking about all that F1 2014 stuff. In my opinion, I think that if you really want to keep the door open for modders, there are ways to do it. I think there are ways to do it, and they simply haven't wanted to. And I'll say more. If you're not going to do it, I mean if you're not going to keep the door open for modding at all, and you're just going to slam it shut, at least justify it with a game that's up to par. I don't think there will be many people worried about criticizing your game for not allowing much modding if the game is a damn great game in return. I mean, I don't know if I'm making myself clear. If you're not going to allow modding or you're going to limit it a lot, at least justify it with a game that's up to par. With a great game that we don't have to rely on external things to improve the experience. I mean, I think we can agree on this. And if you're not gonna make a great game, at least make it somewhat moddable, man. Because in the end, we're seeing that this mod, for example, relies on a lot of FOM cars. The FOM car is the one used in the My Team mode, which is a single model that, yes, obviously allows us to have deliveries, but the reality is that it makes it very repetitive. For one time it's fine, but if you want to play a whole season, it gets a bit tedious. So I think that's where the issue is too, like, come on, let's be a bit lenient with this, right? But the thing is, we're not in either of the two scenarios. Because what's happening here is that the game is broken. But at the same time, it's incredibly limiting the whole modding aspect. So what can't happen is releasing this garbage without giving players options, and on top of that preventing them, well, not prevent because it can be done, but to greatly limit the implementation of mods. And I think this is where they go wrong. Electronic Arts and Codemasters, and that's where the title of the video comes from, I think this is not the way, and unfortunately, the right path has been strayed from for quite some time now. I mean, I think both Electronic Arts and Codemasters have gone off the right path. It's been quite a while now, because it seems like none of the aspects of the game are going in the right direction. I would also like to know your opinion in the comments of this video about this whole topic, what your thoughts are, and what you think. And that's it from my side. I'll see you in the next one.